if your blood sugar has been creeping up after years if you've been watching those numbers climb despite trying your best, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now and give me the next 25 minutes of your full, undivided attention, because what I am about to sharing with you is not what your doctor told you at all. Your last checkup. It is not the advice on the back of ACE's real box, and it is absolutely not the tired, oversimplified message of eating less sugar and exercise more that most people with blood sugar problems have been handed and then left alone with. What I am going to share with you today is the deeper truth, the biological truth, the truth about what is actually happening inside your body every single hour of the day, not just when you eat, but while you sleep, while you sit, while you stress, and yes, while you try your hardest to do the right thing. Because here is the reality that most people never hear clearly. Millions of people who are doing everything they believe is right are still watching their blood sugar climbs, still getting the call from their doctors saying the numbers are not where we want them, still feeling the fatigue, the brain fog, the stubborn belly weight, the cravings that feel completely out of their control, and they blame themselves. They think they are not disciplined enough, not consistent enough, not trying hard enough. That is not what is happening. What is happening is that these people are working incredibly hard, but they are working against a systems they do not fully understand, and today that changes. My name is Dr. Sonam. I am an internal medicine, physicians and metabolic health specialists. For the past 22 years, I've worked exclusively with patients, navigating blood sugar challenges, people with pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and the frustrating gray zone in between where something is clearly wrong but nothing has been formally labeled yet. And in 2 decades of that work, the single most important lesson, what I have learned is this: the body is not random. Blood sugar does not rise and fall by accident. Every number you see on that glucometer is the output of a system, a precise, logical, predictable systems, and when you understand the system, you stop fighting it blindly and start working with it deliberately. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 hidden forces that are driving your blood sugar higher without your knowledge. Forces that most mainstream health conversations completely ignored. And I am going to show you exactly what you can do starting today, not someday, to begin turning this around. Stay with me through this entire video. Every section builds on the one before it. By the end, you will have a completely different understanding of your own body and a clear, practical path forward. Before I can explain what is going wrong, I need to make sure you understand what is supposed to happen, because once you see the design of the system, you will immediately recognize why certain things disrupt it. Glucose, the sugar that circulates in your bloodstream, is your body's primary fuel. Every cell in your body, from your brain to your muscles to your heart, runs on glucose. Your body is designed to keep blood glucose within a very narrow, specific range, not too high, not too low, a tight band that allows all of your systems to function optimally. The primary hormone responsible for managing this is insulin. Insulin is produced in your pancreas by specialized cells called beta cells. When glucose enters your bloodstream after a meal, for example, your pancreas senses the rise and releases insulin. Insulin acts like a key. It binds to receptors on your cells, your muscle cells, your fat cells, your liver cells, and it opens a door that allows glucose to enter the cell, where it can be used for energy or stored for later. When this system works perfectly, the process is elegant and invisible. You eat, glucose rises, insulin is released, cells open their doors, glucose enters, blood sugar comes back down, smooth, controlled, efficient. You feel nothing, you notice nothing, your body just takes care of it. But here is where the story gets complicated for tens of millions of people. Over time, through years of certain dietary patterns, chronic stress, disrupted sleep, sedentary behavior, and other factors we'll discuss, the cells start to become resistant to insulin signal. They stop responding as quickly. The door that used to swing open easily now requires more knocking. The pancreas compensates by producing more and more insulin to get the same response. For a while, this works. Blood sugar stays controlled, but only because the pancreas is working overtime. Eventually, the system starts to crack. The pancreas cannot keep pace with the demand. Blood sugar begins to rise higher than it should. After meals, it stays elevated longer. The fasting blood sugar, the number you checked in the morning after not eating all night, begins to climb. And this is the moment most people start seeing numbers on their glucometer that they cannot explain. The terms for medical this progression is insulin resistance, and it is the foundational mechanism behind the majority of type 2 diabetes cases worldwide. But here is the critical piece. Insulin resistance does not appear overnight. It builds slowly, quietly, over years, often with no symptoms at all until the damage is significant, which means the opposite is also true. Reversing insulin resistance does not happening overnight either, but it does happen. It happens measurably and visibly, and faster than most people expect when you address the right levers in the right way. Let me now walk you through the 5 hidden forces that most people and most standard medical conversations overlook completely. The first hidden forces driving your blood sugar is higher, one that most people completely fail to connect to: glucose management. And that force is chronic stress. ICNO. You've probably heard that stress is bad for you, but I want to go much deeper than that vague warning, because the mechanism by which stress raises blood sugar is specific, measurable, and profoundly important to understand. When your body perceives a threat, whether it is a physical danger or a psychological one, it activates what is commonly called the combat or flight response. Your adrenal glands release a cascades of stressed hormones, most importantly cortisols and adrenaline. These hormones trigger an immediate and dramatic physiological responses designed to prepare you to survive a threat. Part of that response involves your liver. When cortisol and adrenaline surge, your liver receives a direct signal to release glucose into the bloodstream. The reasoning is ancient and evolutionary. If you are in danger, your muscles need fuel immediately. Your body pumps glucose into your blood to power that burst of physical action. The problem is that your body cannot distinguish between the stresses of beings chased by predators and the stress of an upsetting email, a difficult conversation, a financial worry, or a terrible nights of sleep. The hormonal response is the same. The liver dumps glucose either way, and if you are chronically stressed, if cortisol is elevated not for minutes but for hours or days at a time, your blood sugar is being pushed upward continuously from the inside, with no food required. This is why people who watch their diet carefully but live under constant stresses often cannot understand why their numbers are not improving. The food is not entirely the problem. The stress hormones are raising blood sugar biochemically, independently of anything they eat. Cortisol also directly worsens insulin resistance. High cortisol tells your cells to resist insulin's signal to keep their glucose stores closed, because in survival situations, the body wants glucose to stay in the bloodstream and be immediately available, not locked away inside cells. This made perfect sensing when the threat was physical and short-lived. It becomes catastrophic when the threat is psychological and never ends. Research has consistently shown that people with elevated cortisol levels, significantly higher fasting glucose, higher post-meal glucose spikes, and worse hemoglobin A1c scores independent of their dietary choices. Stress is not a staff factors in blood sugar management. For many people, it is the primary one. So what does this mean practically? It means that any effective blood sugar management strategies that does not include a serious, honing street reckoning with your stress load is incomplete. Not managing stress while trying to. Managing blood sugar is like trying to empty the bath, the tub with the faucet still running at full power. This does not require hours of meditation or dramatic lifestyle overhauls. Research shows that evening 10 to 15 minutes of daily, intentional stress reduction, whether through slow breathing, a short walk in nature, journaling, progressive muscle relaxation, or any other method that genuinely works for you, measurably lowers cortisol and produces visible improvements in glucose regulation over weeks. The keyword is intentional. Passive rest, watching television, scrolling through a phone does not produce the same cortisol-lowering effect. The nervous system needs an active signal that the threat has passed. That signal has to be deliberate. The second hidden force is one that the majority of people with blood sugar problems are actively experiencing right now, and most of them do not know it is affecting their glucose at all. That force is disrupted or insufficient sleep. I want to be very direct with you about this because the research is unambiguous and the mechanism is deeply connected to everything I have already described. When you sleep, your body is not simply resting. It is executing a sophisticated series of hormonal, neurological, and metabolic processes that are absolutely essential to your health. One of the most important things that happens during sleep is hormonal restoration, including the hormones that regulates glucose. A singling night of inadequate sleep, even just one night where you get 5 or 6 hours instead of 7 or 8, measurably impairs the very insulin sensitivity. Next day, studies have shown that after one night of partial sleep deprivation, insulin sensitivity can drop by 20 to 25%. Your cells become dramatically less responsive to insulin after just one bad night. That same the night of poor sleep elevates the cortisol. The following day, it increases levels of ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and suppresses leptin, the satiety hormone. The combined effect is that you are hungrier than normal. You crave high carbohydrate foods specifically. You have reduced willpower and impulse control, and your body is less efficient in handling glucose. Lie all at the same time. For people who are chronically sleep deprived, and research suggests that roughly 35% of Americans, adults, sleep less than 7 hours per night. This is not a one-day problem. It is a continuous state. Chronic sleep deprivation produces a baseline hormonal environment that actively promotes insulin resistance, elevated blood sugar, and weight gain around the abdomen, exactly the patterns associated with metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. There is also a specific sleep phenomenon with a direct and dramatic effect on morning blood sugar that deserves careful attention. It is called the dawn phenomenon. In the early morning hours, typically between 3 and 8 a.m., your body begins its hormonal preparation for the day. Cortisol starts to rise. Growth hormone is pulsed. A hormone called glucagon signals your liver to begin releasing glucose into the bloodstream. This is your body's way of ensuring that you have fuel available the moment you wake up. In people with healthy glucose regulation and normal insulin sensitivity, the insulin response quickly manages this liver glucose release. Blood sugar stays in a controlled range. In people with compromised insulin sensitivity, that same liver glucose dump goes unmanaged. Blood sugar climbs through the early morning hours, and when you wake up and check your number, it is higher than it was when you went to sleep, even though you ate nothing overnight. Poor sleep quality, fragmented sleep, insufficient deep sleep. Sleep apnea dramatically worsens the dawn phenomenon. Every hour of lost sleep compounds the morning glucose rises. This is why sleep is not a lifestyle luxury in the context of blood sugar management. It is a metabolic necessity, and improving sleep quality through consistent sleep and wake times, a dark and cool sleeping environment, eliminating screens before bed, addressing sleep. A PNE if present is one of the highest leverage changes a persons can make for their glucose numbers. The research on sleep extension in people with pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes is striking. Studies where participants increased their average nightly sleep from less than 6 hours to 7 or more hours showed significant reductions in fasting glucose, post-meal glucose spikes, and hemoglobin A1C within weeks with no other changes to diet or medication. Sleep alone moved the numbers. That is how powerful this factor is. The third hidden force is one that is rare lie, discussed in blood sugar conversations, outside of specialized metabolic medicine, and yet the science behind it is some of the most compelling available. That force is the role of skeletal muscle in glucose regulation. Most people think of muscles in terms of strength or aesthetics. Very few people understand that skeletal muscle is the single largest site of glucose uptakes in the entire human body. Muscles tissue is responsible for absorbing the majority of glucose that enters your bloodstream after meals. When your muscles are active and metabolically healthy, they act like a powerful glucose sponge, pulling excess glucose out of the blood and using it for energy or storing it as glycogen for later use. When muscle mass is low, which is a common and accelerating problems in adults over 40, a condition called sarcopenia, there is less glucose absorbing tissue available. The same meals that would have been efficiently managed by a person with more muscle mass produces higher and longer lasting glucose spiked in a person with less. The muscle factor is one of the most appreciated drivers of declining glucose tolerance with age. But here is the even more remarkable piece of this story. Muscle tissue does not only absorb glucose during exercise, it does so through a completely separated pathways. During physical activity, a pathway that does not requires insulin at all. When during muscle contracts, movement, it activates special glucose transporters, proteins called GLUT for transporters that move to the surface of the muscle cells and pull glucose indirectly, bypassing the need for insulin entirely. This means that movement, even modest, non-intense movement, is one of the most direct and immediate glucose-lowering tools available. 8-minute walk after a meal can reduce the post-meal glucose spiked by as much as 30%. Not because it burns a significant number of calories, but because the contracting muscle is pulling glucose out of the blood through a completely insulin-independent mechanism. This is why the simple habit of a short walking after meals, something that has been part of traditional health wisdom in many cultures for centuries, has such a profound and measurable effects on blood sugar. The science behind it is as clear as it gets. Resistance training, lifting weights, resistance bands, body weight exercises has an additional and longer-lasting benefits. Building and maintaining muscle mass increases your body's baseline glucose disposal capacity. Every pound of muscle you add or preserve is metabolically active tissue that is pulling glucose out of your bloodstream every hour of every day, not just during exercise. Studies in people with type 2 diabetes shows that resistance training 2 to 3 times per week produces measurable reductions in hemoglobin A1C after 8 to 12 weeks, comparable to the reductions effects of some oral glucose lowering medications. Muscle is medicine. It is perhaps the most underutilized metabolic medicines available, and the movement principle does not require a gym membership or a specific program. It requires breaking up prolonged sitting, one of the most damaging metabolic habits in modern life. Research shows that sitting for continuous 90 minutes or more produces measurable increases in blood glucose compared to the same period broken up by brief 2 to 3 minute walks every 30 minutes. Even standing up and walking briefly is enough to activate the GLUT4 mechanism and begin pulling glucose down. If you sit for most of your day at a desk, in a car, on a couch, addressing this single factor may produce blood sugar improvements that surprise you. The fourth hidden force is one I see tripping up even the most health-conscious patients I work with, people who genuinely believe they have reduced their sugar intake significantly, but whose blood sugar tells a completely different story. That force is hidden in sugar, foods and drinks that are marketed as healthy. Most people are aware that soda, candy, and obvious desserts contain a lot of sugar. Most people eliminate or reduce these fairly early when they begin managing their blood sugar, but the sugars that continue to drive glucose problems are often in carrying foods. Health halos labels like natural, organic, low-fat, high-protein, whole grain, or nutritious. Let me give you some specifics. Examples that consistently shocked my patients. Flavored yogurt, the kind marketed as a nutritious breakfast or snack, often contains 20 to 30 grams of sugar per serving. That is more than some candy bars. The protein content is real, but the sugar content overwhelms it from a blood sugar perspective. A plain Greek yogurt with no added fruit or flavoring has a fraction of that sugar and a much more favorable glucose response. Granola, widely regarded as a health food, is typically loaded with added sugars and refined oats. A single cup of commercial granola cans contains 30 or more grams of carbohydrates that, digested rapidly, protein bars and energy bars, frequently contains 20 to 25 grams of sugar, alongside their protein content. Smoothies, even homemade smoothies with fruit, can deliver 50 or 60 grams of rapidly absorbed sugar in a single serving, particularly lie when the fiber has been broken down by blending. Sauces and condiments are another category that catches people off guard. Ketchup, barbecue sauce, teriyaki sauce, many salad dressings, and most commercial pasta sauces contain significant amounts of added sugar. These are not being eaten in isolation as a treats. They are being poured over meals as a condiment, adding hidden sugar grams to every dinner. Fruit juice is perhaps the most misunderstood item in the hidden sugar category. An 8-ounce glass of apple juice, orange juice, or cranberry juice contains roughly 25 to 30 grams of sugar with essentially no fiber, no fat, and no protein to slow absorption. The juice of 3 or 4 oranges is consumed in 30 seconds, when eating those same oranges whole would take minutes, and fibers that deliver substantial dramatically slows the glucose response. Liquid sugar, regardless of source, is one of the fastest the acting blood sugar disruptors available. The practical lesson here is that reading nutrition labels carefully, specifically the total carbohydrates and added sugars line, is a non-negotiable habit for anyone seriously managing blood sugar, and the focus should be not just on obvious sweets but on everything in the refrigerator and pantry that has label. The surprise are almost always in the foods that feel virtuous. Our full guideline is to aim for no more than 5 grams of added sugar per serving in any packaged food, and to prioritize the whole, minimally processed foods that do not come with label at all. Vegetables. The fifth hidden force is the most cutting edge, the most underappreciated in mainstream medicine, and the one most fascinating from I find scientific perspective, and that force is the state of your gut microbiome, the vast community of trillions of microorganisms that live in your digestive tract. For decades, the gut was understood primarily in terms of digestion. It processed food and absorbed nutrients. That was mostly the story. But over the past 15 years, the science of the microbiome has revealed something far more extraordinary. The ecosystem in your gut is not a passive bystander in your metabolism. It is an active participant, influencing your glucose regulation, your insulin sensitivity, your appetite, your inflammation levels, and even your mental health. People with higher diversity in their gut microbiome, meaning a wider variety of different bacterial species, consistently shows better glucose regulation. Specific than people with lower diversity, bacterial strains are associated with improved insulin sensitivity and reduced post-meal glucose spikes. Other strains, which thrives on additions of refined carbohydrates and sugar, are associated with increased inflammation, worsened insulin resistance, and higher fasting glucose. The composition of your gut microbiome is shaped enormously by what you eat. Diets high in fiber, particular fermentable fiber from vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and fruit, the beneficial bacteria that feed, supports metabolic health. When these bacteria ferment fibers, they produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids. Butyrate, propionate, and acetate are the primary ones. Butyrate in particular has been shown in research to improve insulin sensitivity, reduces gut inflammation, and support the integrity of the intestinal lining. When the intestinal lining is healthy and intact, glucose absorption is regulated and controlled. When it becomes compromised, acetate, sometimes called increased intestinal permeability, the gut becomes less effective at regulating what enters the bloodstream. This can contribute to chronic low-grade inflammation, which in turn worsens insulin resistance. At the cellular level, conversely, diets high in refined carbohydrates and low in fiber-fed bacterial strains that produce compounds promoting inflammation. The modern Western diet, processed, low in fiber, high in sugar, is devastating to the microbiome diversity and is one of the significant environmental contributors to the mix of insulin resistance we see globally. Fermented foods, plain yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, cultures that contain living bacteria. Research contributing to microbiome diversity has been published in leading scientific journals, shown that increasing fermented food intaking measurably increases microbiome diversity and reduces markers of inflammation within weeks. This is not a long-term project. The gut responds to faster than dietary changes. Antibiotics, most people expect. Chronic stress, alcohol, artificial sweeteners, and certain medications also disrupt the gut bacterial balance. If you've had significant antibiotic use, particularly multiple courses, over recent years, rebuilding your microbiome through fiber-rich foods and fermented foods becomes an especially important priority. The gut-glucose connection is perhaps the most compelling reasons why the quality and diversity of what you eat matters at least as much as any single macronutrient ratio. Your gut bacteria are mediating much of your metabolic response to food. Feed them well and they will work for you. Deprive them of what they need and they will, quietly but powerful, working against you. I want to bring everything together now because I know that the 5 forces, each with its own mechanism, can feel overwhelming. Let me give you a clear pictures of how these forces interact and what to do with this information. The foundation of everything is insulin sensitivity. When your cells respond efficiently to insulin, your body handles glucose smoothly. When insulin resistance is present, every challenge is amplified. Chronic stress worsens insulin resistance directly. Poor sleep, it worsens it further. Low muscle mass reduces glucose disposal capacity. Hidden sugars, repeated lie overwhelms the system. And the healthy gut microbiome promotes the inflammation that drives resistance deeper. These 5 forces are not independent. They compound each other. They are all operating simultaneously, and that is why so many people who addressing only one factor, who eat carefully but sleep poorly, or who sleep well but live under relentless stress, did not see the results they expected. The system must be approached as a whole. Here is what the research consistently shows, produces the most meaningful, lasting changes in blood sugar and insulin sensitivity. Number 1. Anchor every meal with protein, meaningful fiber, and healthy fat. These three components, working together to slow glucose absorption, support satiety, and feed the bacteria that regulate your gut metabolism. This is not a diet. It is a meal structure, one that you apply consistently, without restriction or elimination. Number 2. Move after meals. 8 to 15 minutes walk following your largest meals is one of the singles most powerful and immediate blood sugar management tools available. Use it every day. Build it into your routine as an non-negotiable. The science is clear, the effect is real, and it costs you nothing. Number 3. Protect your sleep with the same seriousness you protect your diet. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep is not a luxury, it is a metabolic requirement. A consistent sleep schedule, a dark and cool bedroom, and the elimination of screens in the hours before beds are the foundational habits. If sleeping apnea is a possibility, have it evaluated. Untreated sleep apnea is one of the most significant and under-recognized number of drivers of blood sugar dysregulation. 4. Take your stress load seriously as a medical issue. 10 to 15 minutes of deliberation, stress reduction, daily deep breathing, a slow walking meditation, whatever genuinely works for you produces real and measurable reductions in cortisol and real improvements in glucose regulation. This is not a soft recommendation, it is evidence-based medicine. Number 5. Read labels. Know what is in every packaged food you consume. The hidden sugars in marketed health foods are derailing the efforts of millions of people who believe they are eating well. Eliminating sweetened beverages entirely. Replace fruit juice with whole fruit. Make plain the default for yogurt, nut butters, and dairy products. These changes alone can remove dozens of grams of hidden sugar from a daily diet. Number 6. Feed your guts. Eat a wide variety of fiber-rich plant foods. Aim for as many different vegetables, legumes, and whole grains as possible in a given week. Variety matters as much as quantity for microbiome diversity. Add fermented foods to your daily routine if you can tolerate them. Reduce alcohol, which is particularly disruptive to gut bacterial balance. These 6 actions, applied consistently and simultaneously, address all 5 of the hidden forces driving blood sugar higher. They are not extreme. They are not expensive. They do not require a prescription, or a laboratory or a doctor's visit to begin. They requires understanding the system which you now have and making deliberate daily choices that work with the system instead of against it. What you will experience if you apply these consistently within 3 to 5 days: improved energy and reduced mid-morning fatigue within 1 to 2 weeks. Measurably lower post-meal glucose readings within 4 to 8 weeks. Lower fasting glucose within 6 to 12 weeks. Improvements in your hemoglobin A1C, the number that tells the comprehensive, long-term story of your metabolic health. These are not promises, they are what the research shows, and what I have seen in clinical practice. Consistently, for over 2 decades, the body responds when you address the actual causes of the problem. Your blood sugar is not a mystery, it is a signal, and now that you know what it is signaling and why, you have the power to change it. If this information has given you a clearer picture of what is happening inside your body, if it has made you feel less confused and more capable, I am deeply glad. That is why I make these videos, because understanding is the most powerful the tools you have. If you want a structured, practical daily guide that lays out all of these principles in a clear, step-by-step format designed for real life, not perfect life. Real life, the resource in the description below, was built exactly for that purpose. No extremes, restrictions, no gimmicks, just a clear framework built on the science we discussed today. And if this channel is giving you the kind of home street, evidence-based information you've been looking for, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Share this video with someone you care about who is struggling with their numbers, because the information in this video could genuinely change the trajectory of someone. Shealth, your body is not broken. It is not working against you. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do, based on the inputs it is receiving. Change the inputs with knowledge, with consistency, with compassion for yourself, and the outputs will follow. Dr. Sonam Bodki, thank you for spending this time.